You have a vast ice sheet in Greenland. It covers some 666,000 square miles, I've read, which is roughly 80% of your country. It's melting, but how fast is it currently melting?
Well, it's an alarming rate for at least scientists because people are not living near the ice cap in general. So usually when you hear about melting ice caps, it's a theoretical position for a lot of people. But when you hear the amount of millions and millions of gallons that are melting uh, each day, it's an alarming rate. And you can also see it when you look at how our waters are changing because we are getting warmer and warmer climate in general, which means that the inhabitants in Greenland can also see how the ice is retracting from the coast. So it's fast.
I've read some quite extraordinary numbers. I don't know whether you confirm it. It's various scientific estimates. I mean, you said millions and millions of gallons a day. Now, some estimates seem to say that it's 239 cubic kilometres of ice goes a year. Is that right?
That sounds about right. I'm hesitating to cite the quote the numbers due to the only reason that they're changing. I was about to say by the minute because we also found out, or scientists found out, that it's not just melting from the top; it's also melting from the bottom, which accelerates the speed of which the inland ice, the glaciers are melting as well. So
Mm.
it is an alarming number indeed.
And tell me, does it melt all year round now, or does it melt in the summer warmer months and then freeze back up again in the winter?
Well, usually the top of the ice is melting primarily during the summer, but as you can imagine, the temperatures are quite different at the bottom of the inland ice due to the pressure. So the melting of the ice from the bottom, as they found out recently, we don't have a clear answer to that yet. I hope it's only during our brief summers, but I'm not quite sure.
Mm.
And if not, then it's melting year round, even though we are also getting a lot of precipitation during the winter, as you can imagine, snow, but perhaps not in a rate that can replace the melting snow or ice.
And I think you have something called a melt zone, where obviously snow and ice turns into slush and then water, and the size of that melt zone has been expanding every year. Do you know roughly what the size of the melt zone now is?
Well, again, it's difficult for me to give you an exact number, but what I can do is compare it with different British cities because it's bigger than that. So the melt zones, well, to put it mildly, if you look at the Greater London area, that would be a small part compared to just some of the melt zones we have in Greenland. It's a huge area.
So melt zones, of which you have many, are larger, certainly in some cases, than the entirety of the City of London.
Yes, indeed.
Wow. And in your view, if this is not too much of an obvious question, what is causing this melt? Obviously, rising sea temperatures is the obvious answer, but what is causing that?
Well, we have a lot of factors that are contributing to the melting of the ice, but climate changes are one of the things that we can feel in our daily lives in Greenland. Not just the inland ice, but also ice in general are melting at a faster rate than we've seen previously. And the global warming, when you look at it from our point of view, is of course challenged by the fact that we occasionally have to use fossil fuels to, well, fuel our cars, our ships, our planes, and of course factories. So when we, as a general, the human population are looking at spending fossil fuels, we are also contributing to the global warming, which is accelerating the melting of our ice cap. Now, some would say that's reason enough for us to do something, but as you know, humanity as a whole cannot solve it one country at a time with each different sets of tools, and some don't want to change it. But when we look at it from Greenland's point of view, we are looking at international partners to combat this problem, which is also why we need to inform them, inform the world of what is happening in Greenland as a result of global warming, primarily driven by our own requirement for especially fossil fuels.
Mm. I mean, I only ask you that because the skeptics will say that the melt, which everyone knows is going on, is cyclical. It happens every few hundred years and then things get cold again. And it's not necessarily down to man made global warming. You disagree?
Well, if it's man-made, if it's not, from my point of view, it's not that important. It's happening, and unless we just are looking at the ice as an inconvenience for Greenlanders to extract the minerals in Greenland, then I would agree that we don't need to do anything. But you also know that the effect of it, caused by either humans or not, will affect most countries living near coastal waters in Europe or Asia, the rest of the world. So in Greenland, we are living near the ocean. We always have been, but we are not a flat country. We can actually move a lot of our infrastructure a little bit higher upland because we have a lot of mountains.
Mm.
But when you have rising water levels, then it's a problem for low water or lower countries with not as high tolerance for high rising tides. So we are looking at it from different aspects. One of it is the cyclical nature, which I agree is happening, and is also one of the things that we need to look at. But it's accelerated by the global warming. And again, from our point of view, it really doesn't matter who caused it, what caused it. We are trying to combat it.
Mm. Now, it's been said that I think a further increase in temperatures around 2 or 3 centigrade would result in a complete melting of Iceland's or Greenland's ice cap, rather, some 688,000 square miles of it. What effect would that have? It would raise sea levels, but by how much and how quickly is this happening?
Well, again, it depends because we have different issues when we look at the melting ice cap. One of the primary concerns is that it's melting at a faster rate than we anticipated, which again means some of the estimates we have with regards to how much it will increase the tides around the world in the ocean in general. So, as I said, one of the newer aspects of the research was that they also found it's melting from the bottom, not just the top.
Mm.
So again, it's difficult for me to underscore how fast this is happening, which in turn results in we cannot say for sure how and when it will happen. But with the melting ice cap, we will have a very changing nature of dynamics in Greenland or in the Arctic, because as you can imagine, the ice cap is also a stabilizing factor for both the environment and, of course, a lot of the how do you put it, weather up here in general, where we can also see if the ice cap is not up here anymore, you won't have the cooling effect in the northern hemisphere, which in turn will result in a melting ice cap near the North Pole, which again will increase the melting. So if we get rid of all the ice in Greenland, you'll probably also have the resulting effect that the ice cap near the North Pole also will disappear. So it's a domino effect that is affecting a lot of areas, not just Greenland.
And I read if your entire ice sheet goes, there's still a lot of it left, but if it all goes, sea waters globally will rise something like 7 meters. Now, that would submerge a lot of coastal cities, probably all of them, but it would also submerge Greenland. Greenland would effectively cease to exist altogether.
Well, that's not entirely true. For instance, our house is located approximately, I think it's 45 meters up, and we are near the coast.
Right.
As I said, we can always retreat to a higher placement.
Yeah.
But the reason why I'm not quoting the 7 meters is, as I said, if the the Greenland ice cap is melting and it melts, you will also have all the ice near the North Pole melting, which in turn will rise the level of the sea again. So it's not just Greenland; it's a lot of ice that will be melting. And my conservative estimate is that we cannot just look at Greenland as if this goes, what will happen? We have to look at Antarctic. You have to look at the North Pole. You have to look at, well, there's an ice cap, albeit a small one, in Iceland. We have a lot of different places where we actually will have glaciers melting if the Greenland ice cap is melting. So it is a reason for worry, and it won't happen day by day, but it will happen gradually. So you, in 50 years, 100 years, will see the effects unless we start doing something to combat them now.
Well, we'll get to that. But living in Greenland as you do you see visual evidence of this day by day, week by week, year on year? Does the topography change in front of your eyes? Do icebergs that existed last year no longer exist now?
Yes, I can use myself as an example. We have a place where we usually go hunting during the summer, and that's near an ice cap. For us, it's primarily good to go near ice where the ice is, due to the in this case caribou or reindeer is grazing near those places. We have been observing the same glacier retracting for the last, from my point of view, 25 years, at a rate where you cannot see it anymore. It's not down by the water anymore. It's inland now. So when I first started to seeing it, I think it was around something like 2.5 kilometers out into the ocean. That's gone now. It's inland, way inland now. So we can see how it's changing just the edge of the ice itself. But also when you look at the climate, and we have a lot more different climate than we had 20 years ago. It's a lot more volatile, if I can put it that way. We have, according to the latest data, a lot more storms. We have a lot more violent combination of wind, rain, or snow.
Hi, Mr. Broberg. This is Sonia. At the G7 this month, we saw no global end date to end domestic coal power, no end date for the sale of petrol and diesel cars. Rich countries have failed to hit a target of donating £100 billion in climate aid by this year, and there weren't financial commitments made towards getting there. Were you disappointed with the outcome of the G7 on climate?
Well, let me put it this way. We have a long way to go, and we are also aware of the lack of results at the G7 summit. We are still analyzing it and to see how it puts us in the long-term perspective. One of the main reasons for I'm saying that is because we have also in this government an agreement to look at the Paris Climate Accord and how to join it, because we are interested in looking at different aspects of this. But of course, if, as I said, we are the only ones willing to combat it in the Arctic, if no one else is willing to combat this problem, then we'll be pretty much left alone and left to ourselves. And then it's difficult to combat this problem. But of course, if no one wants to step up, we certainly won't be one of the ones to run away with our tails between our legs. We will pick up the mantle.
And the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow later this year is going to be a key moment. What ambitions do you want to see Boris Johnson setting out there for countries to agree?
Well, I'm quite sure that be it Britain, be it any other G7 or the G26, at the COP26, sorry, countries participating, one of the things that we should agree on is we have to take concrete steps to replace fossil fuels, be it coal or oil, with lasting green energy. That might not solve all our problems, but it will be a step in the right direction. And I hope that Britain will also look at this from a development point of view, a business point of view, and saying, how can the COP26 look at this to develop also less developed economies, to make a change over to either power to X or to just green energy in general to power their normal day-to-day use.
Mr. Broberg, let's move on. There's one or two other things that we should talk to you about with Greenland. Greenland is not just ice. One thing you did do, in fact, you beat us to it by some 3 decades. You had a referendum to leave Europe, or the EEC as it was known as then. You had it in 1982. The result was 53% to 47% to leave. Incredibly similar to us. We were 52-48. Tell me, why did Greenlanders want to get out of the EEC as it was at the time? And do you have any regrets?
Well, I have to clarify a few aspects here. One, when we first wanted to leave, that was when Denmark was enrolled in the EU. Back then, it was around 75% that did not want to join, but we weren't given the option. And then when you look at the following decade before our referendum to leave the EU, we also had a lot of contract workers from Denmark working in Greenland, and they can skew our election results. So we actually had an import of workforce from Denmark at that specific point in time. So when Danes are voting in Greenland, you can actually see the results changing. So the close referendum was primarily, in my point of view, a referendum by Greenlanders versus Danes, not just those, but primarily. So that skewed result compared to the attitude in 72 is quite interesting to observe. And you can also see there's no broad agreement to rejoin the EU at this current political climate. So the main reason for this is, of course, that we have been a colony and a former colonial country as Greenland. You might still argue we are still a colony, as we weren't given the options specified in the UN Resolution 1514. We are not looking at ways to share our country's resources with anybody else, which includes fishing and minerals. So what Greenland has tried to do since 1953 is try to become independent, well, at least not owned by Denmark. And one of the main reasons for this is that we're trying to look at ways to increase our economic growth. And one of the main reasons for doing so is the fisheries. And today we have one of the most modern seafood fishing vessels fleet in the world. So some of it have worked, and we are still hampered in some ways, and some ways enhanced by our close relationship with Denmark. But we are still looking at it from the same point of view, that we are currently, at least, not interested in rejoining.
Understood. You can give us at least some reassurance here, because we still have these rows in this country, that 39 years on, you're still not rowing about your Grexit referendum.
Well, we took a decision, we stuck by it, and we got on. That's basically how we handled it.
Thank you. I'm sure that'll be heard by everyone here. Now, you want to do a trade deal with the UK. UK can now do a trade deal with you too. Now we've left the EU, of course. What are the benefits to either country?
Well, one of the main benefits is, of course, that there's a reason and there's a time for everything. The reason for our decision to leave the European Union is not that unlike Britain's. The timing of it, of course, I won't argue that you had a more difficult leave from EU. It's a lot bigger economy for Britain than for Greenland. But still, when we look at it from our point of view, there's a reason that most countries would like to be in a community, be it the United Nations, European Union, United States. This is for making sure that we can trade. International business is what drives our international relations. So when we look at it from our point of view, when we left the European Union, we are in the middle of the North Atlantic, we are in the Arctic. And we are not part of the European Union, but we have free access to the European markets. And this is something that we also would like to do with the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom is the second country to join the club that we started. It's not something that we encourage everybody to do so, but we are encouraging everybody to just have a free trade agreement, because this will increase our welfare in general, be it United Kingdom, Greenland, United States, European Union. We need to trade with each other with as few obstacles as possible.
And the British
And I
government
think
want to trade with you? Are you getting good signs from Liz Truss, our trade secretary? She'll do a free trade deal with you?
let's put it this way: we put forth an agreement that is not unlike something the United Kingdom has seen before, and we've received good signals from them so far, and also from the All Parliamentary Greenland Group when we talked with them. There's an interest for doing this, and I think the reason why we haven't done it before is we are a small economy compared to European Union. United States, Australia, but still, it's important as a signal for us that countries having left the European Union should also stick together in that regard.